And having recently slipped into a technical recession, the South African economy continues to experience dangerously low levels of economic growth, which does not bode well for national employment figures. According to Aadil Patel, Director and National Head of Cliffe Dekker Hofmeyr's employment practice, these factors make South African business further disposed to widespread retrenchment. To talk more about this, we are joined by Shane Johnson, who is a professional support lawyer for the employment practice. Thank you very much for coming to talk to us about this.
Thank you, Colin. It's good to be here.
At the moment, companies seem to be constrained in terms of production and even salaries. So retrenchments now, as we're talking the R word, are they the only options for companies to keep afloat in these tough economic times?
I think that retrenchment should be seen as a last resort dismissal. In terms of our legal system, when you look at the legal definition of retrenchments and how they should be managed, there really should be a last resort for companies to dismiss employees. As you know, once an employee is retrenched, they will lose their employment completely. So yeah, as I mentioned, our legislation speaks about retrenchments being a last resort dismissal. So they really are not the only option that a company should resort to.
Yeah, but companies are justifying it. They are saying they want to meet their operational requirements and they have to implement cost containment measures. And one of them is the issue of the cost drivers, such as, remunerating employees.
Definitely, Colin. So financial constraints is a valid reason for a company to dismiss their employees, but the company needs to ensure that they follow the correct procedure under our Labour Relations Act. It's called a joint consensus seeking process, and companies have to ensure that they follow the procedural structure of the LRA in going about retrenchments.
So in this case, experience is a good teacher when it comes to the recession that we heard in 1998, 1999, and rather 2008, 2009. When you look at the effect of this and the current prevailing economic atmosphere in the country, what can we learn out of it in as far as the challenges of companies, and more so that the threat of automation as well that the employees could face?
Good question. I think that we need to look at the research that comes out of the World Economic Forum. They've done very, very interesting research regarding the impact of the fourth industrial revolution and technology on the employment sector in particular. They've released a report called the Future of the World's Job Report, and they discuss all the different intricacies regarding how technology can impact on jobs. And lead to job losses in some instances, but on the positive side, it will also lead to certain jobs being created, and the idea of new jobs which are not really actually finalized just yet, or the idea, the nitty-gritties of those jobs not being finalized as yet, but definitely new jobs will be created in the future.
But you know, the issue of retrenchments now are different from the previous era. That time it was the financial meltdown, then recession. But the unions are arguing this time around, for example, at state-owned enterprises, that this issue of retrenchments and the companies not doing well has nothing to do with employees. It was self-inflicted. There was a corruption of, element of corruption, and the coffers of the SOEs were pillaged by the powers that be. So employees are saying that they don't want to suffer these consequences because it had nothing to do with them and it had nothing to do with the operating environment.
That's a completely valid statement, Colin, but unfortunately, financial constraints, no matter how they were caused, it's a reality for these companies. And provided that they're able to provide sufficient proof and use the consultative joint consensus seeking process in the LRA, companies are completely at liberty and have the right to undergo a retrenchment process.
But do employees have legal recourse, and the unions as well?
They definitely do. They can definitely challenge the substantive and procedural fairness of a retrenchment. So it's not only the fact that they can challenge a company if they fail to follow the procedure, if it's substantively unfair. So if there is no real proof of financial a company being financially constrained, of course, unions and employees can challenge their dismissal.
Because at the moment, if we're talking retrenchments, which are justified by employers at different companies, the unions have been questioning that. If you are saying that companies are insolvent and you don't have the biggest unanswered question of where is the money? If the company was solvent in the previous financial year and the current financial year, the company is technically insolvent, where is the money? So why talk retrenchments when we don't know where the money went to?
Good, another good statement, Colin. And I think that in those situations, the management and executive members of the particular company can be investigated for corruption, and if necessary, charged criminally if they have been involved in corrupt activities. But the fact that a company remains insolvent, unfortunately for employees that are affected, it's an inevitable outcome.
All right. So looking at the legal modalities and of course the merits and demerits of why a company has to retrench, on the side of the company, how can it make sure that it adapts to the challenges of the operating environment, and for the employees not to rather be thrown out, but rather be accommodated in terms of redeployment to sectors of production within the company, and also coping with the issues of high-speed mobile internet, artificial intelligence, big data analytics, as well as cloud technology?
So I think that companies have, on the side of the employer, the company has a massive role to play in rethinking the different roles in their organization, particularly those roles that are going to be subject to automation and will be impacted by the fourth industrial revolution. So they definitely have a crucial role to look at how they can accommodate employees whose jobs will be lost to things like automation in other roles, and to avoid retrenchments. And as I've mentioned initially in the interview, I think that we really need to look at the research of the World Economic Forum, as they are at the forefront of how the fourth industrial revolution will impact on employment, not only in South Africa, but the world over.
All right. Thank you very much for making time to speak to us.
Colin, it was great.
All right. Shane Johnson is a professional support lawyer for the employment practice.